Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moments. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Soul Land 2 Peerless Tang Men based on novel. So let's start. After hearing her voice, Huo Yuhao felt a strong sense of familiarity. He was certain that he had heard this voice before. That day, he had unintentionally taken Wang Qiu's veil. She had spoken to him then, saying, "Give it back." Her voice had been captivating, like singing birds, leaving a deep impression in his mind. Huo Yuhao remembered it clearly, because he had watched her closely. Wang Qiu's voice sounded a little lower than this young lady's voice, which was smoother. Had he recognized the wrong person? However, he clearly remembered the radiant butterfly goddess wings and the pinkish blue hair. I must have recalled wrongly, Huo Yuhao told himself. What is your reason for not accepting? Zhong Leshuan continued asking. At this point, this mysterious female student was under everyone's scrutiny. Rejecting the challenge? That could disqualify her, unless she could give a logical reason. Was she going to give up? After all, she hadn't spoken since the start, and no one knew her character. Her voice was as pleasant as ever. I don't think we have to go through all that trouble. I can team up with Huo Yuhao, and we can fight the 5 of them. As she said this, the entire place went silent. She was being too impulsive. Furthermore, she was too arrogant and self-confident. Even though 4 of them had 5 rings and only Ling Luochen had 6 rings, all 5 of them were from the inner courtyard. They hadn't made their way to this point by relying on medicine, either. Among the 5 of them, Ning Qian's 7 treasures glazed pagoda was undoubtedly the strongest. However, the rest of their martial souls were definitely not weak. Dai Huabin's White Tiger, Wu Feng's Red Dragon, Xia Huanyue's Rubber Don, and Ling Luochen's Ice Element, all of them were considered top-ranked martial souls in the outside world. Although they were some way off from the best, they certainly possessed the foundations to become titled Duluos. 2 against 5, this Wang Qiu was too arrogant. Zhong Leshuan also thought that she was being too proud. Furthermore, her words weren't very good for uniting the students. Seeing that Wu Feng and Xia Huanyue weren't here at the moment, Ning Qian and Dai Huabin's expressions changed. Ning Qian turned pale, while Dai Huabin was angry. There was a fierce look in his eyes. Number 2 female student, this doesn't seem too appropriate. You must bear in mind that we have to unite the students, Zhong Leshuan advised. The number 2 female student was silent for a while before she said slowly, "Eldest senior sister, today's my important day. I've been waiting for this day for too long. There are many seniors around. I'd like to ask them how they feel when there are stumbling blocks in their way just as they are about to get together with their loved one. Does this unite them? Furthermore, I'm confident of winning." She started to talk more and more. Huo Yuhao felt a greater sense of familiarity as he listened to her, especially when she talked about her loved one. Huo Yuhao was flabbergasted. She likes me? However, when did we interact if she's Wang Dong's sister? We've never interacted before. Huo Yuhao didn't believe that a ravishing beauty had fallen in love with him at first sight. Her words resonated with many of the people present. Indeed, her words were very strong. However, there were 5 of them trying to kidnap the bride, and they had formed a team. "Sister, I support you. All the best." Wu Ming shouted suddenly, almost scaring Chu Qingtian into the water. "Thank you, senior." Zhong Leshuan didn't know how to respond to her words. Yes? They had made a mutual choice, but they had encountered so many people trying to kidnap the bride. It was possible to understand Ling Luochen and Ning Qian. After all, they had chosen Huo Yuhao, too. However, Dai Huabin was obviously causing trouble. He hadn't even seen the number 2 female student before. Why was he trying to kidnap the bride? Nobody present was familiar with the number 2 female student. Zhong Leshuan could clearly remember that Bei Bei was this number 2 female student's guarantor when she had joined the Sea God's Fate. When Bei Bei told her that she was a new student, Zhong Leshuan trusted him and didn't probe further. "What do we do?" Zhong Leshuan asked Bei Bei in a low voice. Bei Bei smiled. "Let them fight, 1, 2 versus 5? Zhong Leshuan was a little hesitant. Bei Bei said, "Have you forgotten? Huo Yuhao is just like you. As a member of the Sea God's Pavilion, do you think he was only capable of winning over the elders just because he was Elder Mu's disciple? Among the Shrek 7 monsters, his cultivation is the lowest. However, he has the strongest abilities." As Zhong Leshuan and Bei Bei discussed the situation, Wu Feng brought Xia Huanyue back with her. They immediately gathered beside Ning Qian, along with Dai Huobin. Zhong Leshuan lowered her voice. Huo Yuhao, you willing to fight 2 versus 5? Huo Yuhao was stunned. Yes. The surging soul power that was flowing through his body was the Haodong power. It was the foundation of their compatible martial soul fusion skills. Furthermore, martial soul fusion required a process. In this world, there was only one person who could produce the Haodong power with him. In this world, there was only one person whose hands felt so familiar to him. Instantly, countless memories resurfaced in Huo Yuhao's mind. Get lost, okay, you're from this dormitory, too. On account that you tidied up this dorm room, I'll let you stay with me temporarily. However, I have a few rules that you need to remember. First, you can't bring anyone home. Secondly, you're not allowed to annoy me with your naked self. Thirdly, you're not allowed to snore when you sleep at night. Fourthly, you must not disturb me. Last but not least, you'll be in charge of hygiene in the dormitory, but you can't touch my mattress. Do you understand? Why do I have to listen to you? If you don't listen to me, I'll chase you out. If you don't believe me, try me, I'll do exactly that. Let's go out. I don't know your name yet. Before you ask for someone else's name, shouldn't you give your own name first? I'm Wang Dong. I'm Huo Yuhao. Very nice. I think your name is going to disappear from Shrek Academy. Let's go, fool. Wang Dong replied, although you can't sense my aura, I could sense the closeness of your aura when you shared your spiritual detection with me for the first time. My aura doesn't spread because there's a force in my body restricting it. You can only sense my aura if you get close to me. Do you want to try, get close to you? How do I do that? Huo Yuhao asked in a silly manner. Wang Dong snapped, fool. You can just hug me. Huo Yuhao chortled and said, I see. You can just tell me directly. Do we remove our clothing? No. Wang Dong was frightened. Huo Yuhao laughed, come on, then, how does it feel? Not bad. It's rather comfortable, fool. Am I doing this to make you comfortable? I'm asking you to sense the aura of my martial soul. I forgot. Let's hug for a while more. I'll try to sense your aura. Huo Yuhao, wake up. What? Why are you standing so close to me, you Ayo? Wang Dong, what are you doing? Why are you asking me? Why were you sleeping in my bed yesterday? You can't blame me. See, didn't you sleep too? What do you want, to hug, you? Huo Yuhao, I didn't think that you were such a person. Do you believe that I'll whack you? What are you thinking of? Fool, did you forget how we managed to fuse our martial souls? Now that our soul power can fuse, the simplest way of initiating our martial soul fusion is by repeating what happened yesterday. You didn't explain clearly before you hugged me. Are you embarrassing me on purpose? Who knew that you had such a dirty mindset? What can 2 men do? Come on, let's continue cultivating after we finish. This is the wild. Surely we won't just sleep like yesterday. No, we're in a different situation. Why are you so pushy like a woman? Let me do it, Huo Yuhao. Get up. Didn't you say last night that we'd stop hugging each other to sleep? Did I say that, you? I'm going all out against you. You take a look. What do I look at? Is this caused by your radiant butterfly goddess? No, definitely not. Although my martial soul is golden, it's either bright gold or bluish gold. It's never this kind of dim gold. This color seems to resemble your spirit eyes. Let's go down and take a look. Wang Dong's hands started to sweat. She also didn't know what he was thinking. She was actually more worried that he wouldn't accept the truth. If that was the case, everything would have gone down the drain. Even she didn't know whether he could accept this truth. Huo Yuhao, what's wrong with you? Let's fight. Dai Huobin shouted, jolting Huo Yuhao back to his senses. His eyes filled with color again, an unprecedented color. He looked much more determined as he held the smooth, small hand of the girl beside him. He didn't bother with Dai Huobin. Instead, he turned around and said to Wang Dong seriously, I was really such a fool that can't be saved. However, I'm also a stubborn and serious fool. If you don't want this fool will be very sad and be tormented for life. If you keep this fool, he'll protect you for life. Tears flowed down her face. She had expended a lot of effort and finally used the sea god's fate to reveal her greatest secret. She had been very anxious, shy, fearful, and worried. But at this moment, all these emotions disappeared as Huo Yuhao confessed to her. What was left was only the sweetness in the shyness that she felt. He's accepted my identity as a lady. In fact, Wang Dong and Huo Yuhao both knew that there were differences in the behavior of men and women, even though Huo Yuhao hadn't discovered her identity. Furthermore, Wang Dong had started to become more feminine as she grew up. Although Huo Yuhao couldn't tell, he had still had his doubts. Especially after they showed the raiment of light, Huo Yuhao's doubts grew stronger and stronger. However, his focus was diverted by other serious matters, and he didn't uncover this secret. When Huo Yuhao grabbed hold of Wang Dong's hand and felt the surge of Haodong power between them, the secret was revealed. The epiphany that followed made everything seem so logical. It wasn't difficult for him to accept the truth, he was only coming to terms with his own feelings. The conflict and doubts he'd had about Wang Dong were converted into romance. Huo Yuhao, you haven't taken my challenge yet. Wu Feng was angry after realizing that Huo Yuhao hadn't bothered with the rest of them and continued to confess to Wang Dong. It wasn't Wu Feng's first time being shocked today. She only had one reason for coming to the Sea God's fate today: she wanted to compete against Huo Yuhao. 1 white and 3 black soul rings gradually rose from beneath his feet and circled around his body rhythmically. This was a combination that shouldn't happen on Soul Masters, but it existed now, and was just so miraculous. However, the soul rings immediately changed the second they appeared, becoming 1 red and 4 orange soul rings that sparkled and glowed. These two combinations alternated while the colors intertwined, which gave everyone a strange and peculiar feeling. He has twin martial souls, he's switching his martial souls around. Ling Luochen's icy-cold voice carried a tinge of surprise, but there was more caution. She had fought beside Huo Yuhao before, so she understood how powerful Huo Yuhao was. Back then, this youth hadn't even had his 3rd soul ring, yet he had displayed exceptional ability during a top-tier competition, the Continental Advanced Soul Master Academy Soul Dueling Tournament, and his contribution had been imperative to the team's claim on the championship, while today he was a Soul King after 5 years. She had chosen Huo Yuhao today, which had seemed a little impulsive, but it was a cathartic release of all the feelings that had been accumulating at the bottom of her heart. When the big competition ended back in the day, Ling Luochen had actually felt a little despondent because she had found someone who was also ice-type, but was far more talented than she was, and that was Huo Yuhao. Huo Yuhao's ultimate ice gave her an overly strong impression. She knew that in the near future, there would be nobody in the academy, and perhaps the entire continent, that could challenge him in terms of ice-type abilities. There was a yearning in her heart, and she desired to be on the same competition stage or battlefield as him once more. Her own powers would be greatly boosted with his presence. The sensation of controlling ultimate ice was just too magical. Ling Luochen deeply believed that if she could cultivate together with Huo Yuhao, her cultivation speed would be much faster than it was now. There was an obvious distinction between a soul master and a normal person's reasoning, and that was in romantic relationships. Why did Shrek Academy want to host the Sea God's fate? The reason was because the Academy's students were too arrogant, and if others wanted to win them over, these people had to be on the same level of cultivation at the very least. The students' targets were people who would eventually become titled Dolor, with both parties complementing each other to reach this goal was what they desired most. Furthermore, only soul masters who had abilities that could impress them had a chance of winning their heart. Huo Yuhao acted like he didn't even see Dai Huabin's lunge, and his soul ring switched back to 1 white and 3 black soul rings. The black soul ring in the 3rd position suddenly erupted with light, and Huo Yuhao's eyes turned white. 2 pale white beams of light burst from his eyes, but their target wasn't Dai Huabin, they went for the people behind him. The white light didn't hit anyone, instead halting in midair. Its position was in the middle of Dai Huabin, Wu Feng, Xia Huanyue, and Ling Luochen and Ning Qian behind them. The white radiance instantly transformed into a glowing white sphere, and a circle of white light expanded outwards from that position, accurately and steadily enveloping all 5 of them inside. Mass enfeeblement? An elder on the ferry couldn't help but comment in admiration. Such formidable control of his spirit, if I remember correctly, Elder Xian, spiritual control soul skills should be released from the user. How is he able to use his soul skill from a fixed location so far away? Elder Xian chuckled and said, didn't you just say it? Spiritual control. This is perhaps because his spiritual power has reached an impressive level, and he has an incredible ability to control it, so he's able to use the soul skill like that. This fellow has improved once more, his spiritual power. Elder Xian's eyes sparkled continuously. Everything that Huo Yuhao had done for the Soul Tool department over the past 2 years had fallen into his eyes, and while he was pleased, he was also a little worried. He was worried that Huo Yuhao had placed too much focus on soul tools that he ended up delaying or overlooking his cultivation. However, it seemed like he didn't need to worry at all. Dai Huabin and the others immediately felt an intense weakness spreading over their bodies as mass enfeeblement worked its magic. Ling Luochen and Ning Qian were slightly better, as they were engaged in battle solely through releasing their soul power to use soul skills. However, Xie Huanyue, Dai Huabin, and Wu Feng were close combat soul masters, and thus the weakness felt a lot more acute to them. The sudden weakness that Ning Qian felt greatly reduced the amplification provided by the Seven Treasures glazed pagoda, and it even swayed their will to fight to a certain extent. Dai Huabin was pouncing forward, but his movement speed was reduced by at least 30%. Huo Yuhao made his move at this moment. He grabbed Wang Dong, and the two of them shone brilliantly as they flashed out. They gained a lot of speed, and an intense golden light fell on Wang Dong's body at the same time. Faced with their converging attack, Huo Yuhao made an extremely calm judgment. His eyes were suddenly tainted with a strange golden color, and one could see upon closer inspection that there was a golden whirlpool deep within each of his spirit eyes. Two golden beams of light shot out, targeting Dai Huabin. The speed of light was unimaginably quick, and it was impossible for Dai Huabin to evade this attack even if he wanted to, unless he had a skill like Huo Yuhao's spiritual detection to predict the attack. Did he? Of course not. Therefore, he could only face it head-on. Dai Huabin roared into the sky as his second soul ring lit up. At this moment, a surprising 4 of his 5 soul rings were operating at the same time. A dense white beam exploded from his mouth straight towards the 2 golden beams. He wanted to intercept them in midair. This was his second soul skill, White Tiger's Fierce Light Wave. Her red dragon was a fire-type martial soul, and thus she had a natural-born rejection towards the ice element. However, she was still in awe and admiration of Ling Luochun's accurate control. No matter how disdainful she felt towards Huo Yuhao, she knew that facing the 2 of them alone would heap immense pressure on her. Xie Huanyue was about to arrive, and Dai Huabin wouldn't be halted for too long. At this moment, she chose to store power and prepare. Dark red flames engulfed her entire body. Her second and third soul rings flickered at the same time. Dragon Fury and Dragon Armor were unleashed. Wu Feng displayed her strength as an inner courtyard disciple with her control over her soul skills, and she handled both skills at the same time without even touching the ice prison. However, the mighty attack that everyone had expected Huo Yuhao and Wang Dong to launch against the ice prison didn't appear at all. Right when the ice prison shimmered into view, Huo Yuhao and Wang Dong abruptly stopped in their tracks regardless of whether Wang Dong was a guy or girl. How could the people before them rival the chemistry and tacit understanding she shared with Huo Yuhao? She returned behind Huo Yuhao's back once more when he turned around, pressed her hands on his back, and immediately began to infuse Haodong power into his body. Huo Yuhao was facing Xie Huanyue, who sprang towards them at this moment. Xie Huanyue was a defense-type soul master, and his original aim was to prevent Huo Yuhao's assault against Wu Feng. However, he suddenly had a feeling that Huo Yuhao's target from beginning to end wasn't Wu Feng, it was him. It felt like Ling Luochun's ice prison had also been considered in Huo Yuhao's calculations and predictions. Dai Huabin finally recovered from the powerful controlling effects of spiritual confusion. He still felt a little dizzy, and there seemed to be many elements of various types undulating around his body. At this moment, a blinding ray of light and terrifying pressure restored his senses. What he saw was a golden fist. Xie Huanyue had already launched himself through the air, but he couldn't change directions anymore, even though he had realized that something was amiss. In this crucial moment, his 4th and 5th soul rings sparkled at the same time. A blurry light covered his body, and his skin became as dark as coal, while his entire frame became like an enormous ball of flesh as he barreled forward. The light projection of a giant elephant appeared behind him. His 4th soul skill, Elephant Fog, and his 5th soul skill, Elephant Hide. Even time seemed to stop when the golden fist slammed against Xie Huanyue's body. In the next moment, the elephant fog around Xie Huanyue's body whisked outwards and attempted to ensnare the golden fist. However, the elephant fog dissipated, crushed in the eruption of golden light. The elephant hide's tremendous elastic force from the collision also seemed to disappear completely. Xie Huanyue's body was hurled backwards at a speed faster than he'd charged out, and he slammed right into Dai Huabin in the distance. The surface of Xie Huanyue's body appeared to be covered by a layer of golden foil, and golden light glowed continuously. Dai Huabin didn't just sit back. He extended his tiger paws in front of him and attempted to catch Xie Huanyue. However, he felt a frightening pressure pass into his body the moment he caught Xie Huanyue. It was so stifling that it was nigh suffocating, like a supreme ruler had descended upon the world. His mind and spirit were shaken as Xie Huanyue crashed into his chest, and the 2 of them were thrown back several meters from the force before they stabilized themselves. Fresh blood was pouring out from Xie Huanyue's mouth and nose. The fatso's face was ghastly pale, and his body was shaking badly. He stared at Dai Huabin and said, So powerful. My defenses have been broken. This was the sovereign's descent, charged with Haodong power, so how could it be as simple as just breaking through his defenses? The sovereign's descent had left a deep and lasting mark in Xie Huanyue's spiritual sea, so the next time he faced Huo Yuhao, this spiritual imprint would greatly disrupt his nerves and his mind. Dai Huobin was also overcome with a haze of terror, but he still pounced towards Huo Yuhao like there was no turning back. He was as familiar as could be with how powerful Xie Huanyue's guard was. Not even he had the confidence to break through Xie Huanyue's defenses. Even though Xie Huanyue was slightly weaker in terms of fighting power, his defensive capabilities were publicly recognized as the strongest amongst the others of his age group, and yet, he couldn't even take a single punch from Huo Yuhao. Furthermore, this was also under the amplifying effects of the Seven Treasures Glazed Pagoda. Xie Huanyue was shoved off, and Huo Yuhao and Wang Dong took 2 steps back before they regained their balance. The powerful impact still took effect on them in the end. The Seven Treasures Glazed Pagoda's amplification effects were indeed formidable. If Huo Yuhao had launched that attack by himself, he wouldn't have been able to make Xie Huanyue lose all ability to fight. However, he wasn't alone in this battle today. He had the support of the Haodong power. No matter how strong the Seven Treasures Glazed Pagoda's supportive power was, it couldn't compare to a martial soul fusion ability with 100% compatibility, and there was also mass enfeeblement at work. Butterfly wings extended to the side, and large patches of golden light burst from behind them, the light of the butterfly goddess. The ice prison from before was gone, it had vanished under the touch of a tender, tiny hand. Huo Yuhao made his move on one side, while the little snow lady had flown in the opposite direction and touched the ice prison lightly. The ice prison melted almost instantaneously. Ling Luochen realized, to her intense fear and surprise, that the connection with her soul skill was immediately severed when the little snow lady touched the ice prison. The light of the butterfly goddess wrapped around the little snow lady and swept towards the defenseless Wu Feng. Only several breaths had passed since the beginning of the battle till now. Huo Yuhao and Wang Dong first weakened their opponents, before they separated, controlled, and divided the 3 close combat opponents and eventually took one of them down. Their momentum continued, and their coordination could be said to be miraculous and seamless. Nothing was wasted at all, and their judgments were incredibly precise. After he punched Xie Huanyue away, Huo Yuhao didn't look at Dai Huobin, who was charging towards him. His eyes were staring straight at Ning Qian behind Ling Luochen. 2 purplish golden rays of light flickered in his eyes. Ning Qian grunted coldly. The connection between the 7 treasure glazed pagoda and her companions had immediately been severed. Spiritual shock. Every student from the inner courtyard had impressive fighting prowess. However, they were far more inferior than Huo Yuhao. Huo Yuhao had been through so many life and death situations, and he paid with blood and sweat to gather fighting experience from the battles Juechen and Jingxian had forced him to participate in. From his perspective, raw numbers would never be an advantage. Being able to maximize one's potential and being able to unleash one's abilities to the highest possible level were advantages. The light of the butterfly goddess wrapped around the little snow lady and swept towards the defenseless Wu Feng. Only several breaths had passed since the beginning of the battle till now. Huo Yuhao and Wang Dong first weakened their opponents, before they separated, controlled, and divided the 3 close combat opponents and eventually took one of them down. Their momentum continued, and their coordination could be said to be miraculous and seamless. Nothing was wasted at all, and their judgments were incredibly precise. After he punched Xie Huanyue away, Huo Yuhao didn't look at Dai Huobin, who was charging towards him. His eyes were staring straight at Ning Qian behind Ling Luochen. 2 purplish golden rays of light flickered in his eyes. Ning Qian grunted coldly. The connection between the 7 treasure glazed pagoda and her companions had immediately been severed. Spiritual shock. Every student from the inner courtyard had impressive fighting prowess. However, they were far more inferior than Huo Yuhao. Huo Yuhao had been through so many life and death situations, and he paid with blood and sweat to gather fighting experience from the battles Juechen and Jingxian had forced him to participate in. From his perspective, raw numbers would never be an advantage. Being able to maximize one's potential and being able to unleash one's abilities to the highest possible level were advantages. The tiny snow lady began to fly backwards. She was just so petite, and the way she raised her right arm was truly a little comical. This was especially so when she extended a tiny finger that was no longer than a caterpillar as she pointed up at the sky. Her dark blue eyes flowed with seriousness, but no matter what state she was in, her appearance could only be described with one word: cute. The tiny snow lady called out, and a mystical scene occurred. Azure green light immediately shone from Huo Yuhao's body. The domain of perpetual ice. At the same time, the little snow lady's body erupted with an orange-gold luster, and the second orange-gold soul ring on Huo Yuhao's body sparkled vigorously. The ice and snow were released from beneath Huo Yuhao's feet. A blizzard began to spread instantly. A temperature that was more than 20 degrees below zero swept forward along with the blizzard. The Ice Jade Emperor Scorpion's domain of perpetual ice, and the Snow Emperor's snowy dance of the brilliant sun were combined, the snowy dance of ultimate ice. The next soul skill that Ling Luochen released was immediately consumed by the snow and ice that loomed over the sky. The intense chill that appeared within a split second completely suppressed the red dragon's heated flames that had burst out from Wu Feng's body. The scene in front of Dai Huabin's eyes immediately became nothing but white snow and ice, and the extreme cold caused his speed to plummet. The group of elders on the ferry were already standing up. Is this a domain ability? The other students from the inner courtyard in the distance who were participating in the blind date looked on as their faces became a little slack. That terrifying world of snow and ice had a diameter of more than 100 meters, and everyone could vividly feel its chill in their heart and soul. Is this really something that a five-ringed Soul King can accomplish? Everyone had the same thought in mind. The sea god's lake began to transform. It had only been affected by Ling Luochen's ice element at first, which formed a layer of ice more than 100 meters in diameter on the lake's surface. However, more than half of the entire sea god's lake was now starting to freeze over, and an eerie chill permeated the skies. There was only astonishment in Zhong Lushuan's eyes. When she turned towards Bei Bei, she could see the same bewilderment and astonishment in his eyes. It was clear that not even Bei Bei knew that his little junior brother was this powerful. A golden hammer flew out under the cover of snow and ice. All five of their opponents were trying to resist the intense coldness coating the area, but everyone froze at the same time. Mantra amidst the void, spiritual tempest. This martial soul fusion skill became even more terrifying under the cover of the snowy dance of ultimate ice. Nobody could see what was happening inside the domain, not even Elder Xian could see through it. Unless he forcefully broke through it, everything within its area of effect was part of Huo Yuhao's world. Fortunately, the snowy dance of ice and snow didn't last for a long time, so it didn't freeze the entirety of Sea God's Lake. The violent wind and snowstorm slowly stopped. The original battlefield had turned a dazzling white. A foot of ice had already accumulated in that short period of time, and the chill caused the internal temperature of the entire academy to drop. Huo Yuhao stood where he was as he held Wang Donger's hand. Not far from them stood 5 ice sculptures of different forms. As he turned around, Huo Yuhao faced Wang Donger and said softly, "I'd like to see you." "Can I?" "Yes," Wang Dong agreed. After the fight, their tense feelings had disappeared, and the Haodong power that circulated in their bodies had guided them. Even though he was facing a strong opponent, Huo Yuhao was still very resolute. His hands trembled slightly as he touched the hat and veil. He felt his heart beating faster and faster. His intense yearning was mixed with anxiety. Wang Donger's reaction was greater than his. She lowered her head slightly and twiddled her fingers in front of her. She wasn't anywhere near as full of energy as she was when she had called for a 2 versus 5 fight. Huo Yuhao eventually stopped. He didn't pull down the hat. He whispered something before Wang Donger nodded her head. In the next moment, Huo Yuhao held her hand as they glided backward. Countless streaks of lights exploded like fireworks, shooting out from Huo Yuhao and Wang Donger's bodies as their center, blinding everyone. Amidst the lights, Wang Donger was pulled into Huo Yuhao's arms, and their bodies combined into one entity. The golden bluish wings started to expand at a frightening speed, their size doubling instantly. The radiant butterfly goddess wings were normally separated into top and bottom, but there was another jade-colored middle wing right now. It was smooth, transparent, and brightly colored, releasing a thick aura of life. The true meaning of life was light and water, and this life aura complemented the aura of light. The dazzling butterfly wings opened wide. Blue, gold, and green lights colored the world around them. Above the wings, there seemed to be countless beads of water refracting what light was present. As the lights shone, layers and layers of frost were released from the radiant butterfly goddess feet, making her slender figure look extremely elegant. As the frost spread, the snowflakes on the ground were guided into the air where they started to dance. As the freezing chill spread, Huo Yuhao and Wang Donger's fused bodies started to transform in a shocking manner. A slender figure started to surface from the tricolored glow. The hat and veil melted away within the golden lights, leaving only a young lady behind. She was more than 180 centimeters tall, and her slender figure extremely captivating. Her long hair was pinkish blue and flowed all the way down to her feet. Her eyes were bright gold, and her slender figure was flawless. No words could describe how proportionate her enchanting figure was. Her ravishing looks were superior to all of the ladies present. Every streak of light and curve of her body were perfectly complementary. No one could describe how they felt when they first saw her. However, she definitely had everyone's full attention. She moved in the next moment. She stepped forward with her left leg and rose into the air. The orange-gold snow lady landed on her shoulder as she gestured, and the tricolored wings behind her back propelled her body into the air as she started to dance. Thick mist started to spread from her legs upward, changing into streaks that surrounded her body as they spun around her. The dark sky suddenly cracked open, and a streak of golden sunlight descended, landing on her body. Suddenly, the surrounding ice and snow were illuminated by a golden glow. A golden halo engulfed her, like a goddess that undergoing a rebirth within the light. She started dancing in the air. Every step she took was gentle and perfect. Her enchanting looks were filled with the light of life and hope, her wings greatly accentuating her body and movements. The raiment of light surfaced as she was surrounded by the warmth of the light. Her wings extended and retracted continuously, adding to her otherworldly elegance. A subtle golden rune appeared on her forehead, clearer than the last time. It seemed to be the image of a golden trident. Her golden eyes were gentle, her smooth white face slightly rosy. Her figure flashed, and was somehow in front of an ice sculpture. As she touched the sculpture, it started to melt. The ice covering the sea god's lake had turned into her stage. As everyone watched in a daze, her dazzling wings beat as she danced in the air. 5 ice sculptures melted one by one. Ling Luochen, Ning Qian, Wu Feng, Xia Huanyue, and Dai Huabin had not lost consciousness. They had been lost in the snowy dance of ice and snow, and the spiritual tempest. However, they didn't completely lose consciousness. As the ice melted, a warm feeling engulfed their bodies and quickened their blood. They also saw the ravishing figure and the long, pinkish-blue hair. Solitary dance amidst the frost, raiment of light. They were also dazed. No matter how negative they felt, their emotions slowly calmed down within this aura that was a combination of cold, life, and light. As the tricolored wings retracted, the raiment of light finally returned to its original spot. It separated and became 2 different people again. Huo Yuhao was still Huo Yuhao, but the lady beside him no longer had her hat on. She was evidently a smaller version of the goddess of light. As her long, pinkish-blue hair flowed behind her, her eyes started to roll. She was embarrassed, and didn't dare to look at Huo Yuhao. Huo Yuhao was also in a daze. Although he knew that it was Wang Donga in front of him, he still didn't believe it. Wang Dong and Wang Donga looked so similar, but he felt as if he couldn't find Wang Dong. Wang Donga was an immature version of the goddess of light. So, my goddess has always been by my side from the start to now. There's a disguise technique in my family that enabled me to change my voice and alter my facial lines. I could even develop an Adam's apple. Although the changes aren't too drastic, they make it difficult for others to recognize me. Wang Donga's voice was very soft, but Huo Yuhao could still hear her clearly. No wonder she was so different. You concealed the truth from me for so long. Huo Yuhao grinned. Sorry, don't say sorry. I was a fool, Huo Yuhao said gently as he held her hands. Didn't you say that I'm your fool? Don't regret your choice. Let me think about it again. You already have Ju Zi. Wang Donga shot back. Nonsense. We're only good friends. Huo Yuhao replied resolutely. Wang Donga lifted her head. Her gaze was slightly stiff as she stared at Huo Yuhao. Really, of course. When we first exhibited the raiment of light, I was already captivated by the goddess of light's figure. No one else could enter my heart after that. After pausing for a moment, Huo Yuhao looked at her seriously. Right now, my goddess is by my side. Wang Donga finally smiled. Her smile seemed as gorgeous as blooming flowers. She had expended a lot of effort just for today. After more than 2 years apart, she had recognized her feelings for him. She had even tried to forget him. However, she realized that she couldn't do so. That was why she went to find him and brought him back to the Clear Sky sect, hoping that her relatives would approve of him. When she met Ju Zi along the way, she felt threatened. After returning to the academy, she began her setup. She revealed her identity to Bei Bei, Jiang Nan Nan, and Xiao Xiao, hoping to receive their help. She had wanted to wait until the next Continental Advanced Soul Master Academy Soul Dueling Tournament before she revealed everything to Huo Yuhao. However, she realized after their separation that she couldn't wait any longer. She was most troubled by the fact that Huo Yuhao might not develop feelings for her if he didn't know that she was actually a lady, no matter how close they were. Now that everything had settled, he turned out to not be a complete fool, and her hard work had finally paid off. Huo Yuhao suddenly seemed to think of something. As he turned and looked into the distance, the entire sea god's lake was completely silent. However, everyone's attention was focused on him. He was slightly embarrassed. Eldest senior sister, eldest senior, can we go now? The bride kidnapping should have ended, right? Huo Yuhao shouted towards Bei Bei and Zhong Leshuan. He normally called Bei Bei eldest senior, while Zhong Leshuan was often referred to as eldest senior sister by everyone else. When he called out to both of them together, it sounded weird. Everyone only recovered from their shock after hearing his voice. The biggest commotion was happening on the ferry right now. The elders and teachers on the ferry had already disembarked. They had no choice, the ferry couldn't move since the lake water had been frozen. Yang Xiaozhi's eyes were shining as he asked, Elder Xian, should we ask Huo Yuhao about his spirit now? They were all top-ranked soul masters, and could tell the benefits that a spirit could bring. Moreover, Huo Yuhao's 4 orange gold soul rings were too shocking. Whether it was a spirit or the orange gold soul rings, they had never appeared before. They would feel very uncomfortable if they didn't ask Huo Yuhao clearly about these new existences. Elder Xian snapped, all right, don't be annoying. They've just become a couple, let them be intimate for a while. Tomorrow morning, you can come to the Sea God's Pavilion and we'll ask him together. Wang Donga is really secretive. However, Huo Yuhao is really just a blockhead. They stayed in the same room for so long, but he never discovered her identity. Ha ha ha. Elder Lin smiled and said, those 2 children are really interesting. Huo Yuhao's domain was very strong. I seemed to see orange gold rings lighting up when he unleashed the domain just now. Was that a domain-type soul skill? Elder Xian waved his hand and said, it's not that simple. He already has a domain-type soul skill, but it's not so strong, and can't cover such a huge region. It seems like this fellow has encountered something miraculous again. I believe this domain is related to his spirit. Since everyone's so interested in his spirit, I shall specifically call for a conference in the Sea God's Pavilion tomorrow and allow him to participate. Since he's also a special member of the Sea God's Pavilion, it's time for everyone to meet him. All the elders nodded their heads. While they were old, they were still very curious. Moreover, this concerned the future development of Shrek Academy. Part 1 end here.